slow and talk what we know. Our special guest is world renowned Mississippi investigative reporter and author Jerry Mitchell. If you have seen the movie Ghosts of Mississippi, then you've heard Jerry Mitchell's name referenced several times. He was the investigative reporter who would not go away. After almost 3 decades, he was given credit for helping to spearhead the reopening of the Medger Evers case, where he sacrificed to help Merle Evers get justice for Medgar Evers, who was the NAACP president. Medgar Evers was shot down in his own front yard by a Klansman member, Byron Beckwith. Beckwith was an American white supremacist from Greenwood, Mississippi, who bragged about killing Medgar Evers in motivational speeches at various Klan rallies. He was also a member of the White Citizens Council. Mitchell stated in his book, A Race Against Time, that Beckwith was the most racist person he had ever encountered. His book is the Mike Magazine Publisher's Choice. World-renowned author from Mississippi, John Gresham, gives his kudos to Jerry Mitchell, and that's a big deal. Listen to it on Audibles or get your hard copy today. Now let's hear from our guest. And welcome to another edition of Delta Sip, where we sip slow and we talk what we know. Okay, so we're gonna cut straight to the chase. I want you guys to please subscribe to the Mike Magazine on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. We're there. Even on Trust. We're on Trust with Trump. Okay, so I just want you guys to please make sure that you continue to subscribe to the Mike Magazine. Tonight, we have with us special guest, Mr. Jerry Mitchell. Yay!
Thank you.
Listen, I have been so excited about this interview. Thank you so much for coming on to the Mike Magazine.
Happy to be with you.
Yes. So now a lot of people who may not know you, tell them who you are. See, if I try to introduce you, I'm going to say, if you ever seen the movie Ghost of Mississippi,
That's
you
fine.
know, yeah, this is the guy.
Yeah, that's not me, really.
That's not the real you, right?
Well, it's Hollywood's depiction of me, which is fine. I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do. Yeah, it's what can I say? People are going to know me as an investigative reporter, and that is what I've done for many years. And but I'm also a dad. I'm also also many other things. So, but I'm grateful to be with you, Angela. This is great.
You're being very modest about it. You've worked for the Clarion Ledger. You're not from Mississippi, but you're ours now.
Yeah,
you belong to us now.
Yeah, they came up with a book of like famous Mississippians, quote unquote, what some time back, and I was in it. I was like, I'm not from Mississippi actually, but I guess I've been here long. I've lived in Mississippi longer than I lived in Texas, which is where I grew up. So.
Well, you belong to us now, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I consider myself a Southerner. I don't consider myself a Texan at all. So anyway.
So let's talk a little bit about you, because I mean we're going to talk about the book Race Against Time in just a second,
Sure.
which is going to spell out everything as far as it relates to like civil rights and your contribution. But I want to know, how were you raised? Because just looking at the movie Ghost of Mississippi and listening to the book, I'm like, okay, he's got to be the oldest child or he's the youngest. And so I'm just sitting here not knowing who this guy is. I want to know the story behind the story.
Well, yeah, no, I didn't tell much about my childhood in the book. But no, I'm an only child, and it's even worse than that. I'm an only grandchild on both sides. So I was potentially well, very spoiled by, especially by one. Well,
Mm-hmm.
probably grandparents. Both grandmothers were very uh,
Mm-hmm.
wanted to spoil me, albeit in different ways. One with food, and the other one with toys and gifts. And but my dad was ex-military. He was so you've seen Top Gun, and everybody's seen Top Gun. That's what my dad did. He was a
Oh wow.
Navy pilot, flew off carriers.
Oh
So
wow.
he did that.
Right.
He did that for 4 years, and then got out of the armed forces, and then we moved back to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad was in San Diego, stationed in San Diego, and a lot of other places, but that was the main place. And then
And
moved back to
your
Texas,
mom.
and started kindergarten, and or not started, but continued kindergarten when we moved to Texas. Yeah.
So was your mom a stay-at-home mom?
No, not my mom was ahead of her time. My mom worked uh, pretty early on, and then my dad started a business, a tire business, and my mom worked, and my mom basically ran it while my dad was on the road. I mean, and of course, my dad wasn't always on the road. He would be gone. He would be gone one night a week, but then he
Oh,
would the rest of the time after he got done with the truck run to be back. So, and he had several drivers, and so I grew up around, not my dream. I grew up around tires. That was my childhood.
so what was Christmas like?
What's that? What was what?
What was Christmas like?
Yeah, it was cool. My dad's mom, a grandmother, I mean, she was incredible. She was very much a Southern belle, even though she was from Oklahoma. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but she was, had I'll never forget it. She had a pink aluminum Christmas tree. I'm not making this up. But my grandmother, my grandmother loved pink. She
Mm-hmm.
absolutely loved pink. Everything pink that she could have pink.
Mm-hmm.
And but she was very, you know, doting
Is
on me. I
is
mean, she and not surprising. If you only have one grandchild, it's kind of, you know.
is she the one who bought you all the toys
Oh
or gave
yeah,
you
she
all?
bought me a lot of toys. She bought me a lot of toys. In fact, my mom and dad would get mad if they wanted me to say no. My mom and dad taught me to say no to my own grandmother because if I didn't say no, she would just keep buying them. So I had to
Yeah.
learn to say no to my grandmother.
So listen. Now, let's get into the book.
Thank
Did you
you.
ever did you ever see yourself as an author?
Yeah, no, in my 20s, I wanted to write a book. I mean, it's really interesting how life kind of goes full circle. When I was, I'm trying to think what age, I guess about 15, 16, somewhere in that time frame, 14
Mm-hmm.
even maybe. Well, I grew up reading newspapers. My
Mm-hmm.
mom subscribed us to three newspapers. So I was reading the newspaper every day for by the time I was 7 or 8. Three newspapers plus magazines. I mean, I was a voracious reader and read pretty early too. So that was kind of my upbringing. And then, and yeah, and then, when once I got a little bit older, I wanted to write. I got interested in writing, and so started doing that on my own. And then there was a career day where they talked about journalism. I thought, oh, well, I can get paid to write. Okay, that was my initial thought about journalism. It's a means by which I can write and get paid. And then once I graduated from school, well, I was the editor of my high school paper. I was news editor of my college paper. Once I graduated from school, I figured out pretty quickly that I was a better reporter than I was a writer. I kind of had for whatever reason, a knack for reporting. So that's kind of what I did. Learned about reporting, and then got interested in investigative reporting, and then became essentially an investigative reporter. So that's kind of what I've done ever since. So.
So not everybody can be an investigative reporter. You got to have guts. You got to think outside the box. You
Yeah,
got to be
it does
different.
involve all that stuff. Yeah.
You,
Yeah, I just think certain people are wired for it. You know, I've known a lot of reporters, and it's just, and that's not to degrade other reporters whatsoever. I mean, we need feature reporters, you know, writers who can do features. We need writers who can do other kinds of stories. But for whatever reason, you know, investigative stories, yeah, it just takes kind of a special breed to be an investigative reporter. You have to be um, really, you have to be crazy. I think that's really what you have to be. You
on
have
the
to be kind
brink,
of crazy, a little bit crazy.
on the
Well,
brink of it.
because you go, well, you want to go, yeah, to be crazy. I mean, you want to go interview killers. You want to go, you know, you want to go interview people in prison. You know,
Mhm.
and I've done all that.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's you just, you know, you chase serial killers, which I've done, and you just do other things like that. That it's just, you know, why would you do it? Well, I'm crazy. That's it. I'm just nuts.
Listen, you got to be a little bit,
You do. You have to
you,
be. I mean, because if you think about the consequences of it, you would never. It would
that's
paralyze
right.
you. You would never do
You
anything.
won't do it. You won't do it. And so, with that being said, in 86, you find yourself at the Clarion Ledger,
That's right.
and you're now hearing about these three freedom workers. These they came to help for voters registration in Philadelphia. Is that correct? And
Yeah, the
so,
three civil rights workers: James Chaney, Andy Goodman, and Mickey Schwerner. Yeah.
yes. And so they came, but everybody knows that they were murdered right here in Mississippi.
Yes,
And,
they
and
were.
I'm going to pull up a picture and just tell us a little bit about how they sparked your interest and what upset you to the point where you say, you know what, I want to investigate this thing. This is not making sense to me.
Well, I saw the movie Mississippi Burning, and I saw it with two FBI agents who investigated the case.
Mm-hmm.
And after it was over with, they kind of started telling me, you know, here's what really happened, or you know, different aspects about that. That's the FBI reward poster that was put out after they disappeared. They were missing for 44 days until the FBI
Oh,
found their bodies on. They disappeared June 21st, 1964, and their bodies were found 44 days later.
mm,
So, so after the movie was over, et cetera, and I'm talking to the FBI agents. I mean, really, and of course they have end credits on this, but basically there were more than 20 Klansmen involved in killing these three young men, and
mhm.
nobody had been prosecuted for murder. And I covered courts, so I was like, "What?" You know, I mean, you know, sure, every once in a while you hear about, and that's their bodies that were found 44 days later, buried 15 feet down in the earth and
Mm,
dead,
mm, mm,
and just awful. And so
mm,
you see that, and you go, those 20 guys got away with murder. Like they
mm,
never got prosecuted for murder. And I
mhm,
was just like, what? How did
mm,
they get, you know, how did they get away with murder? And
mhm.
so the FBI agent kind of explained about some meeting they had. And anyway, that just kind of spurred my interest in that case. And then of course, come to find out that was one of many cases. And that's, you know, I be frank about my own knowledge. I didn't know any of this. This was all, you know, new to me. I didn't grow up in Mississippi. I was unaware of the violence. And to be honest, I've it's been interesting. Some of the people who've read my book
Mhm.
now and have commented back to me, both black and white, saying, I had no idea all these things happened.
Oh, wow. And I tell people all the time, they tricked us and they tricked the white people, and I feel sorry for both sides. And for you,
Right.
it was what I pick up from you, what I gather is that it wasn't a matter of black or white, it was right or wrong. Why is it that they're not
That's
being brought to
exactly it.
justice?
That's
Hmm.
exactly it.
Hmm. And
Well,
so,
because look, justice should matter to all of us, and
Mm-hmm.
justice it should be colorblind, and
Mm-hmm.
it's often not, but it should be. And it shouldn't matter if you're rich or poor. Shouldn't matter if you're black or white. It shouldn't matter. I mean, anybody with any sense is going to say, "Oh yeah, I want a triple murder." I'm not going to let the killers in a triple murder walk away. But
Right.
that's what happened.
But whoever would have thought that in Mississippi this type of stuff was going on? I heard you say that um, in when you were referencing the war, you were thinking they were talking about a certain war.
Yeah,
Explain it.
yeah. Yeah, when I first arrived in Mississippi, I kept hearing people talk about the war, and I thought maybe they were talking about Vietnam because that was, the most recent war. And then come to find out they were talking about the Civil War. I was like, what? It was pretty
And that
eye-opening
was,
to me.
I said, now why in the world would he not know that they were talking about North and South? You didn't know.
I didn't know. I mean, I grew up in Texarkana, and the Civil War it's taught, but it's not. Around here, you see, the Confederate battle flags and all that kind of stuff around with certain people waving them and, et cetera, and displaying them. But where I grew up, people typically, not that there weren't maybe some out there that did it, but for the most part, if people had if you wanted to go with the stereotype, had the pickup truck with the thing in back, it would be a Texas flag. So you know what I mean. And so it wouldn't even be a Confederate flag. It was, people flew. If you grew up in Texas, the Texas flag is ubiquitous. It's just everywhere. It's on the Coke can. It's on the lottery tickets. Everywhere. So I didn't. It was a new experience for me.
Well, and that was normal here in Mississippi. I moved away from Mississippi. I tell people I moved to Bristol, Connecticut, worked at ESPN, and
Oh wow.
yeah, and so I understood, like in Mississippi, it's strange, but you know where you stand in Mississippi, and I have like an
Yeah,
appreciation.
no, Marley Evers said the same thing to me.
Oh wow,
She said the exact same thing. Well, that's what she said. It was easier to deal with race in Mississippi than it was up north.
yes, and I don't know that people, and I'm glad to hear you say that she shared that with you, because when I went to Bristol, Connecticut, man, there was this one woman at the post office. She would not serve me, and and it was not just one time. It happened
Right.
more than once, and so now I'm calling home because this is foreign to me. In Mississippi, you know where you stand. They're
Well, I
not
guess say
pretending.
they're gonna let you know real quick where they
Yes,
stand.
yes, and I can appreciate them being real, But
That's what Marley Evers said. She said
yes,
it was much easier to deal with racism in the South because
yes,
if people were racist, they were racist to your face, and
yes,
up north, some people would shake your hand and stab you in the back. So
yes,
I'm, I'm just sharing what she said about it.
yes,
So she's
and
lived both ways.
that was my experience, and it's crazy to say I had to leave Mississippi to experience racism. That's crazy. But anyway, I want to jump over to Merle Evers.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, oh
I'm gonna
yeah.
throw a picture out here of her
That's
husband.
that's that's Medger Evers right there. Yeah,
That's Medgar Evers. He wanted to be an attorney. He wanted
yeah.
to
He
go to
did.
law school,
He did. That was his plan. And
and
thought
he.
about politics, by the way. Thought about, being a lawyer and then possibly getting into politics. So,
Mm-hmm. So talk talk about how you got involved with the Evers family.
well, the story is what led me to him. Actually, I had talked to him earlier. There was one time before for a story. It had to do with the awarding of the awarding Jonas Savimbi the Medgar Evers Humanitarian Award. That was something Charles Evers, Medgar Evers' brother, did, and Myrlie Evers was very upset about this. And so I had talked to her once before, but then all of a sudden I've got this story about, if someone tells me I can't have something, I want it like a million times worse. And so there was something called the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission records, which were all sealed for 50 years by the
Yes.
Mississippi legislature. And I'm like, well, there's got to be something in there. So I basically then began to try to get sources that access the records and get the records. And they showed at the same time the state of Mississippi was prosecuting Byron D. Beckwith for the murder of Medgar Evers over secret assisting defense, trying to get Beckwith acquitted. And nobody knew that. So that story ran October 1st of 89. And
Oh, wow.
Myrlie Evers asked, as a result of that story, then Myrlie Evers asked for the case to be reopened. And then that's when things began to happen. Yeah.
Let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because,
So I could talk a little bit more about Myrlie Evers, but that was the sequence of that. Yeah.
okay. And so you are the white boy on the scene who's the
I
journalist.
am.
And the Jackson Advocate, where I write for them from time to time. I'm a contributing writer.
Great.
They had a bad reputation in the Black community. And this was brought to my attention this morning, right? Talk a little bit about Percy Green and the, how do you call it, the Sovereignty
The Sovereignty
Commission?
Commission, which was basically the state segregationist agency that infiltrated civil rights groups, and in the case of Percy Green, he was the editor. We're talking about back in the 1960s, by the way, 50s and 60s. Percy Green was the editor of the Jackson Advocate, but he was also on the Sovereignty Commission payroll. He was being paid, and he would go up north and out west and talk about how things, Mississippi, we love segregation, we love the way things are in Mississippi, that kind of thing. I don't know if he was quite that blunt about it. Certainly white speakers were. That they also sent out white speakers. Of course, they didn't have to pay them. They were happy to go for free. But yeah, he was on the payroll. There were some other Black editors that were on the payroll back in those days. And it's sad. It's sad, but it's true. And
it is so sad that the media outlet that we were supposed to trust betrayed our trust. And when
they were
watched
running full stories. The Jackson Advocate back then ran full. I know of at least one instance where they ran a complete story that the Sovereignty Commission wrote. And it was all about, it was trying to connect Dr. King to communism. That was the whole theory. It was ludicrous, but that was their theory. Oh yeah, Dr. King is secretly a communist, and so they're trying to prove their point by linking him to other people. And so they wrote this complete story, and it was all planned out. They got the Jackson Advocate to publish it, and then they first, and then they got the Clarion Ledger. So the Clarion Ledger and Jackson Daily News, to be clear, were right in stride with this. They were, basically, segregationist newspapers. And so both of them are, getting Sovereignty Commission reports and publishing them. And it was just crazy. But they got the Jackson Advocate to publish it first. So it made the story look more legitimate. Right. And then the Clarion Ledger published the story. And it was like M.L. King linked to Reds or something like that. And it was ridiculous.
That's heartbreaking, because in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, famous photographer from Memphis, Ernest Withers, is that his name?
Withers, yeah. He was informant for the FBI, worked for the FBI, got paid by somebody the FBI. Yeah.
Black guy. They say he would
go very, very disappointing, and took a lot of famous photos people know, including in the Emmett Till case. He's the one that took the photograph of Mose Wright pointing his finger at he took
that picture.
Yeah, he did take that picture. Yeah.
And I was wondering who took that picture
and it was a black
Ernest
guy.
Withers. Ernest Withers took that picture.
My goodness. And I just saw that picture the other day of him pointing.
Yeah. He took it. I can't remember if he took it directly from the Chicago Defender or maybe it was for one of the other newspapers in Memphis, but he took that photograph. Certainly it ran the Defender. It ran all around the world.
Well, the good thing about that, when we speak of Myrlie Evers, there's a quote that I got this morning that she said at NAACP function that how did she put it? Oh, how I wish the Jackson Advocate had been like this when Medger was living.
Yeah. Well, that was
Charles Tisdale had the opportunity. They warned him, you need to change the name of the Jackson Advocate, but he didn't.
I don't know about all that, but that's news to me. But his family has certainly turned the paper around and deserves credit for that.
And I'm also told that in the Civil Rights Museum, the Jackson Advocate has no place there. And this is why, because Percy Green betrayed the people.
I'm of the opinion we to me, history, this is what history is about, in my opinion. You have all this debate now about CRT and what do we teach kids in schools. And the other day on Twitter, this history teacher said, I had this white student come up to me and say they just studied the Indian Removal Act, and the student said to her, "Why do we always have to study things that are so sad?" And so the teacher was asking for what should she say back, and so I actually replied, and what I said was, sometimes the truth is sad, sometimes it's happy, but we must always tell the truth. So that's, I think, the answer is, it's all about the truth, and we may not, it's not always going to be pleasant. And we're right here in the Bible Belt, so I can use this example, right? So if you read the Bible, for example, there are a lot of sad stories.
But they're necessary.
Yeah, but we still read them, right? We still read them. It doesn't keep us from reading those stories. And why do we read these stories? Because we can learn from them.
That's right.
And history is the same way. We don't teach history from a perspective of, any other reason than, look, this really happened. Obviously, we don't want this happening again. So let's tell the truth.
Let me say this. Well, let me say this, though. Throughout history now, since we're talking about about the Bible, there was a Pharaoh who came along way after Joseph had favor in Egypt.
That's right.
And he said, I don't know nothing about no Joseph or his God. And he blotted him out. So the people who have control, they get the upper hand and they get that opportunity to write the history. So we know throughout history this has happened. So this is not unusual. But when you have watchdog reporters, when you have investigative reporters, and most historians are fair when they tell their stories, most of them are. You want to know that truth. You want to know, because like you said, we can learn from that. Let me ask you.
The idea is learn. We learn, and that's kind of what I tried to do with my book. I hope hopefully is I'm trying to tell the story, and in a compelling way, but also embedded within that is the history, and so people can read that and learn from it.
And you have the black and white picture there.
Yep, that's from the FBI files. It's never been published before, but I had the photo, which is a photo of the burned out station wagon. This was the station wagon the 3 civil rights workers were traveling in when the Klan caught them.
No way.
Yeah, and then of course killed them, and then they tried to conceal the evidence, so they burned the station wagon. And the FBI found it a few days later. it was completely burned out. I mean, all the seats, it was just a shell, essentially.
And
But I thought to me this was such a powerful picture,
mm-hmm,
and I don't know that I feel fortunate in a sense of I actually picked out this picture to be the cover of the
mm-hmm,
book. So
mm-hmm,
that's pretty rare. I mean, from what I'm hearing from other authors, so I feel very
mm-hmm.
fortunate. And I think they did a fantastic job. I think it's a very compelling cover. I'm very
The
grateful.
name, the name.
Yep,
Race Against Time. When I hear that, I think about the 3 decades, almost 3 decades, right? And
exactly.
what happens is most people pass away, and it's like, man, we gotta get to this person
Exactly.
before. What was the name behind Race Against Time? I'm just guessing.
Well, I mean, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, I obviously it's a play on words, and sometimes play on words don't really work for titles, but I thought it did.
Mm-hmm.
And my publisher, interestingly, when when he heard the titles, like, well, I don't like 95% of titles, but I like your title. So, and there was never a debate about the title of the book, which I was grateful
Oh
for.
wow. Oh wow.
Um, but I like the play. Obviously got race involved in this story, and then time. But you're right; it is indeed a race against time because a lot of these guys are dying, and
Mm-hmm.
even to this day, the Emmett Till case and other cases,
That's right.
where you've got suspects maybe who are alive and but dying
Mm-hmm.
off, and witnesses and things like that.
And so, with that being said, man, when I tell you this book is so awesome, I love history, and we could go on and on and on about um, some of the cases. And I do want to talk about the most racist person you'd ever met.
Yeah,
Um,
Byron Deal Beckwith,
yes,
the killer of Medger,
we
the
got
killer of Medger was Byron Deal Beckwith.
we've got to talk about him because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's one of the first people that you introduce us to in the book.
No, yeah, he's pretty early. Yeah,
Yeah,
so he kind of, really in retrospect, I'm very grateful I met him when I met him because um, I didn't really know anything about this white supremacist world that he belonged to,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
so I spent about six. So he talked about certain people, like he talked about Richard Butler, for example.
mm-hmm,
Which wouldn't necessarily be a name most people know, but Richard Butler was the head of Aryan Nations, which is one of the most violent white supremacist organization. They were the ones that were responsible for assassinating a disc jockey in Denver,
mm.
stealing millions of dollars from a Brinks truck. I mean, all these other, events, they were connected with, in terms of violence. But I didn't know when Byron Dealbeck was talking to me that who this guy is. He just said Richard Butler, and and so really began to learn about white supremacy because of that conversation with Byron Deal Beckwith. But he was the most racist person I ever spent time, serious time with. Just inward this, inward that.
Mm-hmm.
Starting all the other non-white races. Um, considered he was very anti-Semitic. He considered Jews to be satanic. It's just, I mean, it's a whole long conversation we could have just about his beliefs, but his Christian identity, and it was really, really sick.
But you talk identity, yes, and how he went under the radar because let's be for real here. The White Citizen Council.
Yep.
I remember talking to one of my beloved white people in my life, and he told me, Angela, that was like the social norm
Oh, it was
in in,
at that
in
point
Mississippi.
in time. Yeah, in
And
the 50s
so,
and 60s. Yeah.
and to be a part of that was not that you were into all of the lynchings and things like that, but that was just the thing to be a part of at the time. And he went on to tell me, hey, my family, they got out of it. When they started seeing what was truly happening, And I don't care what people say. We got good white people in Mississippi. And when you have people who you had to help you raise your babies, and then you see their children grow up and go to college, and you formulate some type of bond with
Yeah.
them. And you don't want to find out that, oh, instead of her baby going to college, he was killed. And I can only imagine, because even with Emmett Till's case, I say this in my mind, and I could be wrong. I said that if one good white person knew that they were looking for that kid, they would have gotten him out of there on the train, first thing smoking, if they could have, because they love Mr. Moses. Somebody in the white community knew him. And I knew that they didn't like what happened, because I'm looking at the comments today where people saying that was wrong what she did. And we're looking here.
There's Beckwith right there.
Who are we looking at?
That's Byron Deal Beckwith. Yeah, I spent about 6 hours talking to him. And as I mentioned, he's the most racist person I've ever spent serious time with. And like I said, N-word this, N-word that. I mean, you remember some people, you talk to for a while, you feel like you need to go get a bath. That kind of conversation, and so it was getting dark, and he insisted on like walking me out to the car, and I'm like, really?
Yeah, right.
Okay. That's okay. I think I can find my way. So he walks me out to the car anyway, gets me out there, says, "You write positive things about white Caucasian Christians, God will bless you.
Right.
You write negative things about white Caucasian Christians, God will punish you. God does not punish you directly. Several individuals will do it for him." And so his wife and made me a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can guess what I did with the sandwich after that comment.
Yes, I think you said didn't make the trip.
No, the sandwich did not make the trip.
You ended up going back to see him again.
Well, I didn't see him again. I that had to do with the gun. I was looking for the gun. I was looking for the murder weapon. But I did make a return trip to Signal Mountain. I sure did.
Oh, okay. Now, I'm going to put some pictures up here, and I just want you to just start going, okay? Just
sure.
go.
I'll go.
Okay. So these are random pictures, okay?
All right.
Let's talk. What is this?
Yeah, Black Monday. Black Monday is the speech that was kind of the inspiring speech for Byron D. Beckwith and many others. It was kind of the call to arms. This is Black Monday is from the white supremacist standpoint, is the Monday that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. So everybody knows that, the one that desegregated public schools, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So they viewed that in horrible terms. They called it Black Monday. And it was a speech given by Tom Brady. It looks like Brady, but they actually pronounced it Brady.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, Byron D. Beckwith was never the same after he heard this speech.
Oh, wow.
He used to sell this pamphlet everywhere he went. I've interviewed his son many times and talked to others too. And anyway, he was a member. Beckwith was a member of the White Citizens Council. And later joined the Klan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, first, and then later joined the Klan.
Now, who is this?
Sam Bowers. Sam Bowers is the head of the White Knights, the KKK, responsible for at least 10 killings that we know of here in Mississippi, and most violent Klan organization in the United States.
Now, from what I understand, in order to have a killing in the state of Mississippi, you had to go through this guy. Is that correct?
If it was a Klan killing, yeah, it was.
Yeah. So
if you wanted to be authorized, in the sense of, if you were Klansman and you carried out a killing that wasn't authorized, then you weren't going to have the backing of the Klan, whereas like you weren't going to be provided lawyers. For example, Byron D. Beckwith had 3 free lawyers.
What's the chances of that?
And that was actually because of the White Citizens Council. They were all paid for by the White Citizens Council, not the Klan, but the White Citizens Council.
Uh-huh. And
And he was a
so
very active member in the Citizens Council. Yeah.
now let's go here.
At Sam Bowers, that was when the original photograph is when Sam Bowers was arrested in the attack on Vernon Damer, who was an NAACP leader in
Mm-hmm.
1966 in Hattiesburg, Mississippi area. And so that's what this photograph is. And
Mm-hmm.
then the next photograph is the photo. Well, not this one, but this is
This
Mrs.
is
Damer. This is
right.
Mrs. Damer. This is Ellie Damer. She's the widow of Vernon Damer. She is still alive to this day. I think she's 97 now. I talked to her just the other
Wow.
day. Yeah.
Is she
Yeah.
still in her right mind?
Yeah. Better than most other people.
And let's
Yeah,
go back
this
to
is
this one.
Bowers this is Bowers right after he got convicted and
Mhm.
was marched off to prison. And that
And
was
he
this was August of 1998 is when he was convicted and given life in prison, just like Beckwith.
now let me ask you, because this is kind of I heard you tell that story how this attorney came out of the nursing home or
Yeah,
something.
I'll tell that
Related
story.
powers?
I'll tell that story. So, well, to back up a little bit, I have to kind of explain. You know, so the Damer case was filled with a lot of humor. Okay, I mean it's a deadly serious case, but
Yes.
there are some funny stories. So just bear with me. This is kind of
Okay.
some of the stories that emerged from it during the trial. It was the funniest trial I ever covered in my life. You know, deadly
Mm-hmm.
serious matter of funny trial. So uh, a guy by the name of Devers Nix was also arrested with Sam Bowers. He's like Bowers' right hand guy.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of cut to the chase, you know, well, his family brought him up in a wheelchair and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and then, you know, when he told the judge he couldn't take more than a couple steps without needing oxygen, and the
Hold
oxygen
on,
judge,
I think I
judge
got that picture.
you got
Is
that
that
photograph? There it is. There he is, right there. So you know, pulls him up in front of him, and the judge, like I said, well, normally I don't do this, but I'm gonna let you out without bond. And then a dozen days later, that's like
mm-hmm.
a reporter's dream. We like caught him playing golf, so we got
And
a
I think
picture.
I have that
We got the
picture.
golf picture. You can put that up. We caught him playing golf,
That
and
was funny to
so
see him.
we we
Mhm.
we published obviously kind of before and after pictures, and he was
Were
what's that?
and were they side by side pictures?
Well, yeah. We had a big picture of him playing golf, and then I think this one, yeah, there it is, a big picture of him playing golf. Well, that's him playing golf after he said he couldn't do anything.
And this is
And the judge
Bowers,
had him
right?
arrested, by the way. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
the judge had him arrested, by the way.
And
So
how long did it take for the judge to arrest his right hand man, this right hand man?
oh yeah, well this guy got arrested. He just didn't go to jail because originally he didn't go to jail because you know he was considered it. The judge said, "Oh no, I don't want to put you in jail. It's obviously you're
Mm-hmm.
sick. Let him go." So anyway, it's wild.
Who
Yeah,
was
and then
this?
this is Edgar Ray Killen. So Edgar Ray Killen was the guy who kind of orchestrated the killings of Cheney, Goodman, Schwerner. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and never got convicted of that. So there was a federal trial in '67, and then this is the four little girls. The
From
four
Birmingham.
girls were killed in Birmingham, in the Birmingham church
Mhm.
that was bombed by the Klan and killed those four beautiful girls. Yeah,
And you said there was another one,
yeah.
and
There's a fifth girl who was blinded in that blast named Sarah Collins.
mm-hmm.
Forget about Sarah, and she's still alive. So
Is she?
she is.
Oh wow.
And
And
then, and yeah, there she is right there. That's Sarah. And
This is
then
serious.
I've gotten to know, and I don't think there's a photograph of this, but I've gotten to be very good friends with Lisa McNair. That's Denise's younger sister. So,
Okay. What are we looking at here?
oh yeah, this is when Fred Shellsworth, and to explain who he is, he's the one that invited Dr. King to come to Birmingham, and
Uh-huh.
so um, he's the one who was attacked by this white mob
Mm.
and had a concussion. His wife had her
She was
ankle broken.
stabbed.
No, she was stabbed, and the daughter had her ankle broken. That's it. And
Mhm.
it was an awful attack. This happened in 1957 when he tried to enroll his two daughters at the all-white school in Birmingham. And
Mhm.
so anyway,
Who is this?
so yeah, but anyway, go back to that one. Go back to the one you just had up. So Bobby Cherry was among the guys that attacked him, and he's the one with the cigarette on the right side. So I was able to find this. I didn't even know footage existed, but I was able to find the
Oh
footage.
wow. Man,
Uh,
I hear you talk about how you went to um you would go to certain library, you would go to the library
yeah,
and look up get the phone books, and it was cross.
yeah,
What
that
did you
was yeah. Well, that was back before the internet, so you didn't have.
Woo!
You didn't know. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the way you had to operate in those days. You used. Well, I knew the phone books. I could try to look up the old. That was when I knew that Byron D. Beckwith was trying to find where Medgar Evers lived, and then
Mm-hmm.
Medgar Evers wasn't listed in the phone book.
Mm-hmm.
It was unlisted. But there's this whole sequence of streets that he shared with the white cab drivers because he's trying to find Medgar's house.
Mm-hmm.
And so
He
and so
was prior to the killing because he
yeah,
was
this
trying
is like days before Medgar was killed. This is the Wednesday, and Medgar was killed the next week, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, days before Medgar was killed. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it's just wild. It's kind of a bit of detective work, just trying to
This
figure
was
out.
way before GPS.
Yeah,
This,
yeah, none of this. So I was able to figure out is one of Beckwith's best buddies back then was a guy by the name of Gordon Lackey, and I knew that. I had
mm-hmm.
actually interviewed Lackey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it turned out that the street that Beckwith called off, where there wasn't any matches, I guess you could say is the best way to describe it. You can read it in the book. It's kind of a long
Right.
story.
We don't want to give it away. We
Yeah.
don't want to
Well,
give it
anyway, you
away.
can read it. You can read
Because
it.
I thought, man,
But I basically figured out that the reason Beckwith picked out that street, I'm convinced, is because
his
Gordon
his
Lackey's uncle lived on that street.
mm-hmm.
And so yeah, so it's all fascinating. It's fascinating how it all fits together.
Let's pull another picture up. Talk a little bit about the attorney who represented.
Yeah, this was the attorney that represented Sam Bowers in the Vernon Dahmer trial on the
Is
right. His name is Travis Buckley.
with the glasses on.
Yeah, it's him. It kind of looks like he's got frog eyes. Yeah, that's him. The guy on the right.
Now, is he the one who fell asleep during the trial?
No, that was the other attorney. The other attorney that represented Devers Nix fell asleep. Well, he was supposed to, he was supposed to
Give him a signal.
give him a signal to take the Fifth Amendment, and of course he fell asleep. Yeah, yeah.
Now that was funny.
That was funny, and then this one's funny that you just showed is funny because Sam Bowers, like I said, was represented by Travis Buckley. Well, Buckley was not just a lawyer for the Klan; he was a leader in the Klan. In fact, he was actually indicted for the Vernon Dahmer firebombing. Never convicted or anything like that. So, fast forward. Sam Bowers goes on trial. The prosecution lays out its case. Billy Roy Pitts, who's involved in the killing of Vernon Dahmer and plead guilty, is basically testifying. And then in his testimony, the prosecution asking about this planning meeting that took place prior to the attack on Vernon Dahmer's family. And Pitt starts naming off everybody's there. I was there. Sam Bowers was there. Devers Nix was there. Travis
And the
Buck
court
was there.
reporter, what did the court reporter say?
And the court, well, Buckley didn't react. I mean, like his name got called and he didn't react. And then the court reporter's like, "What were those names again?" And so,
Can
you
you
know,
say it one
he
more time?
repeats the names, and then finally Travis Buckley hears his own name and jumps up like a rocket. You know, it's like, "Objection, Your Honor." Yeah,
It was too late.
I swear.
Now,
As I always say about that, I've covered a lot of trials in my life, but the only trial I ever witnessed implicated the defense lawyer himself. I mean, it was wild. It was a funny trial. It's funny.
you know, you'd think he'd know to stop talking, but it's like he had diarrhea at the mouth. You know, he's like, just, yeah, it was me, it was him, it was them. And he's just going on. He never got that signal. It was just too late. It was too late. And who is this?
That's Sam Bowers. That's Sam Bowers.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
that's a young picture of Sam Bowers. Yeah.
Now, I am going to call off some names, okay?
Okay.
And just tell me a little bit about them.
Sure.
Let's talk about Ross Barnett. I know we got the reservoir named after him.
That's right.
And
he was governor. He was governor of Mississippi when all, you know, not all of this happened, but a certain amount of this happened. He was a governor up until 64.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like January 64, he went out of office. So he was like when Medger was killed and things like that, he was governor.
He came to that trial too. He was the former governor then, right?
Exactly. He was a former governor at that point and shook hands with Beckwith.
Which,
you know,
the jury saw him do.
Which obviously, you know, I presume the jury saw it anyway, but yeah, it's just awful, you know, because it obviously someone like that obviously can have an influence on the jury.
Yes. Ed Peters.
Yeah, he was the district attorney involved in prosecuting Byron D. Beckwith.
Bobby
DeLauder. Yeah, he was the main prosecutor. He was the one that pushed for it.
Bobby DeLauder put his career on the line when he did that. And I say that they made him pay. They found a way to make him pay for his role in making sure that the Evers family got justice. Because anytime
Bobby did an excellent job. I think that people need to realize that, recognize that, and I would say as well about the Medger Evers family. We haven't talked about that much about the family. Mm-hmm. I would say this for all the families. Without their courage to be willing to, push for these cases, to be able to push for justice in these cases would have never happened. Mm-hmm. I mean, they decided, they're going to have to go right back and re-experience all this pain all over again. Mm-hmm. And they were willing to do that. They were willing to say, hey, this is important. We're going to do this. And yes, it means we'll have to relive this, but it's worth it.
And they trusted you, and that speaks volumes.
Yeah. Well, the Evers family was over time, and but to be honest, Merle Evers and I developed a friendship pretty quickly. I say friendship; it was professional friendship, but then after the verdict and everything, it's been really a true friendship. I love all the families, but Merle Evers and I certainly have a special bond.
Now, there was a point in the movie, and you can tell me if it happened the way it did or not.
The movie? Oh, it didn't happen like that.
Hold on. Let me say it. Now, the guy who played you, he's
Jerry Levine. Jerry Levine. Yeah, Jerry Levine.
What's his name?
Jerry Levine. He was actually in Teen Wolf many, many moons ago.
Okay. And
He was
so
born on the 4th of July. He's been in a number of movies. Yeah.
he
Not
well
great.
he was playing you. He was
Yeah,
Jerry. So he's on the phone and he's talking to Bobby DeLauder, right? And he's like, I know you got that gun, and I'm getting ready to go to the press with it because you lying to Merle Evers, and she trusting you, and you're not going to pursue this thing. Did it happen like that?
no. It was
So
actually
you,
better. Well, here's what's weird, in
yeah,
my opinion. It's actually the scene would have been far better if they'd just done it like it really happened.
yeah,
Michael Rajabi and I mentioned, Michael Rajabi and I went and investigated this tip that where the gun was, and we
mm-hmm,
got picked off. What the tipster told us was that Ed Peters, the district attorney, had the gun.
mm-hmm,
We didn't believe it, but we
mm-hmm.
came back and checked it out, and sure enough, it turned out to be true.
Wow.
It's kind of a series. It was kind of a series of events, and Michael J. deserves a tremendous amount of credit for us figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
And but we figured out that they had the gun. That Bobby DeLauder had the gun, like the DA's office had the gun, and so we found. I called Bobby's wife. I knew her. I mean, this is why all this stuff is so small townish. I mean, Dixie DeLauder, who
She
was
left
Bob.
him. She left him
Well, she was his wife,
at
and
that time.
and oh no, but she was his wife, and then Dixie also worked for the same newspaper that I worked for. I mean,
Whoa.
it's all just incredibly connected. And
Oh,
then
wow.
I don't know that I have all this in the book. I'm just telling you. And
Uh-huh.
then this is how it even gets wilder. My wife at the time was tutoring their son, Bert. So
Wow.
I mean, all this is like you can't make it up,
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and so anyway, we go out, we confront Bobby DeLauder
Uh-huh.
on the little league field where he's, coaching. And so he gets done. It's burning hot. We're just burning up. And it
Uh-huh.
was hot, summer day. And then Bobby gets done and comes over and Rajabian confronts him and he won't say. And then by this time we figured it out,
Mm.
and so Bobby basically when I got him by himself, he essentially admitted, "Yeah,
He
I would have told you sooner." And anyway, it's a long story reading the book, but it's a wild story, that's for sure.
Bobby, as an assistant district attorney, went above and beyond as a prosecutor.
Oh yeah, he deserves
That's
tremendous credit. I
unheard
mean,
of.
despite this story I'm telling, I mean, he deserves tremendous credit. It
Yes,
wouldn't have happened. This case would not have happened without Bobby DeLauder. No
that was
question.
that was unheard of. And he went on to be a judge, but the word on the street was the DA himself, now Peters, was supposedly working with the sovereign. How do you put it? The
Sovereignty
sovereign.
Commission. I don't know about Ed Peters, but but Ed was of that generation.
Yes,
I don't know if Ed was working with the Sovereignty Commission. That's news to me. But
for
anyway,
for a fact. Okay, but it was alleged.
it
And
may
some.
be alleged. I do
Uh,
know it's actually something the other way as well, which is that he and Tom Royals were involved in that litigation. There
uh,
was a protest in Port Gibson, I guess it was Port Gibson,
mhm,
Mississippi, and
mhm.
that they were involved in defending the uh, basically the black residents there that were involved in fighting that. You know,
Mhm.
they were trying to prosecute them for protesting
Okay.
essentially, boycotting. I think it was boycotting. Yeah, they were boycotting a store, and so we're trying to prosecute them. And Ed was involved in defending them, but
Okay.
certainly
Yeah. And
it
like
got
you.
some criticism. Got some criticism later
Mm.
for saying stuff like, uh, if all things were equal, he would always pick the white guy on the jury
Yes.
because he thought
Uh,
if someone was black, they're
yeah,
going to pose the death penalty. Yeah.
yes, that's right. And so I say that looking at the movie, Ed Peters went through the motions as a prosecutor, but Bobby really fought that thing. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they
I
still
think here's a little bit to explain Ed, maybe a little bit more, and I've got a little bit of reference to this in the book.
mhm.
Is Ed Peters more than anything hated to lose. So I think I don't know I don't know that Ed Peters was so gung ho about this case at all. But
Gotcha.
then once they're doing the case,
Is
believe
it
me, Ed is that way. I mean, he's a former
uh-huh.
Golden Gloves boxer. He hates losing, and so
Mhm.
I think that's very true of Ed as well.
So he was in it to win it then once the ball got
That's
rolling.
what I'm saying. I don't think he was going through the motions. I think
Okay.
Ed at that point. Well, what I'm saying is, I don't think he wanted to do this case, but once they were doing it and let Bobby do it, then he was, gonna win. They weren't gonna lose. He didn't want to
And
lose.
and I say this, they make you pay for going against the grain.
Yeah,
Some kind of way, some type of way, you're gonna pay. And
sure.
now I'm gonna call another name, Charles Evers.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's Medger's brother, Charles Evers,
Mhm.
and I knew got to know Charles very well. So
Mhm. And so um
he and Medger were
did he
very
go
close, and both fought in World War II, and both
Mhm.
went after the war to try to go vote, and got turned away by these white men with guns.
So
And go ahead.
he knew firsthand what it was like to be denied the opportunity.
Yeah.
And
And then when Medgar was assassinated, then Charles came and took his place. Yeah.
yes, and he had some words that he said. But anyway,
Yeah,
uh,
no, Charles was he and Medgar were different in a lot of ways. I mean,
uh-huh.
Medgar was a very, a little more stoic and
Uh-huh.
careful about his words. And Charles, just whatever came to his mind, he said it.
You're gonna hear it. Now,
Yeah.
did he go on to become a mayor?
He did. It was the
Mhm. And fair,
black first black mayor of a
fair.
multiracial town. Yeah, in
Mhm.
Mississippi. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fayette, Mississippi.
And let me call another name. Richard Barrett.
Oh my gosh, white supremacist. Who I can
Attorney.
say,
Attorney.
yeah, he was an attorney. Yeah, he was an attorney,
That's right.
and
Hmm.
Richard's like I almost could devote a whole book to Richard. He's a really bizarre character. And
Hmm.
it's pretty obvious from the book. I mean, if not, I mean, I don't mind giving it away. I mean, Richard became a very valuable source of mine. I mean, he would
Oh,
tell me, he would tell me what was happening. He told me when Beckwith sent him this letter and let me make a copy of the letter, and then there ended up being this court hearing over it. As Beckwith got in trouble essentially over it. It was just very fascinating. Anyway.
now is this the letter where he sent people that who could possibly be a juror
Yeah,
in
potential jurors.
North?
They basically sent them out everywhere in the
Hmm.
county so that people who were potential jurors would read it, and it was basically telling them to acquit Beckwith in the Medgar Evers case.
Now, Lloyd Jones.
Oh my goodness!
Now, let me ask you this. Hold on.
I yeah, go ahead.
Was he the most notorious sheriff in the state of Mississippi, or he was one of them?
Well, one of them, I don't, maybe there's one that I don't know of, that was more
Hmm.
notorious, but he was certainly one of them. His reputation was formed because of what he did as a highway patrolman
Okay.
in the '60s and early
Okay.
'70s. He He apparently, I think it was him, shot Ben Brown in the back. That was a guy that was literally just walking across campus when there was a standoff between police and students and protesters, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
in '67, and shot Ben Brown in the back.
Mm-hmm.
I think he probably was the one that did it. Can't
Where
say
was
it 100%, but I'm
was
pretty sure.
was he a trooper at that time?
Yeah, yeah. Shot him in the
Where
back with shotgun. Shot him in the back with shotgun.
where was he? Where were they at that? Where did this
There
happen?
was kind of a gap in between the crowd. The protesters were throwing rocks and stuff like that, and then the police were, you had Jackson Police, and then you had the Highway Patrol.
Uh-huh. Um, James Meredith.
First known black man to attend University of Mississippi. There was a black man who attended before James Meredith, but he passed for white. Kind of interestingly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
James Meredith is still around.
Yeah. and still speaking his mind.
Oh yeah. I love to see him
I
throw
saw
his
I
hands
saw
out.
him. I just saw him the other day.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
When he talks, he speaks from his heart and he throws his hands out, and he's saying what he needs to say.
Yeah.
He was a tree farmer, is that correct?
I think so. I'm not 100% positive. Meredith has done it all. That's all I got to say. He's done it all.
So, and with that being said, let's talk about how we can get your book. Where can we get your book?
You can get it on Amazon. You can get it hardback.
Audible.
And this cover is the paperback actually. So you can get the paperback. You can get an audiobook if people like Audible or audiobooks. And I happen to do the narration for it, happen to read it. And as and we were talking about this before the show started, I do all the voices. So that's I get to do that as well. So yeah, so it's available in Kindle. I know some people like Kindles, the books on Kindle. So if you've got a Kindle, it's you can do that as well.
I got it on Audible, and when I tell you, I truly enjoy hearing your voice. I'm like, he has that southern sound, southern drawl when it's necessary, and then you return back to being the narrator, and then you go to sounding like Byron Beckwith, and then you are sounding like Merle Evers. You are just doing.
I don't know that I can do Merle very well, but yeah, thank you.
You did pretty good. You did good.
I try to affect them. I don't know that I'm doing a perfect imitation, but I'm trying to affect the way they speak. Merle Evers is just so eloquent and incredible. I mean, what a treasure. She is just an absolute treasure. Dr. King said one day America would recognize its true heroes. And I think that day has begun to come, that we're beginning to recognize, I would hope, this is just my hope, I would hope that the president would seriously consider giving a presidential medal to Medger and Merle Evers. I think it would be a good thing to do.
If he's listening, I wonder if he'd do it. But
I think they gave one to Fred Gray, and he deserved it. He was Dr. King's lawyer and Rosa Parks' lawyer in Montgomery. But my goodness, Medger, Merle Evers. I mean, just what an incredible couple.
And that is what I call a technical hiccup. And so I just pray that we have a lot of people, and you mentioned in one of your lectures where the young man Dylan went into the church. You started
Yeah,
talking
Dylan Roof. Yeah, I
about
talked about Dylan Roof. Yeah, Dylan Roof. What was it? What I'm figure out the math. Was it 7 years ago?
mm,
Walked into church
mm-hmm,
in, you know, basically they're in Charleston, and killed those 9 beautiful people. And what he was doing before he did that was he went on the website for the kind of the descendant of the White Citizens Council. So these things
mm-hmm,
have effect. It's that hate has not really gone away. It's just kind
mm-hmm.
of reformed in different ways. We may not have a Klan today, but we've got organizations that are no less white supremacist.
Yeah. And not only that, you have white nationalists, you have black nationalists. Um, and
That's true.
so, if we talk about one side of the coin, we have to talk about the other. And with people feeling inferior, I guess they will try to rebel and come up. Is this the church?
Yeah, that's the church that he went in and killed the people. It's just sad, so sad.
And so I just pray that one day we can figure out
Yeah.
how to overcome this thing.
Well,
Because
it's critical to our survival, um, as a nation. I think that we've got to figure this out.
mhm.
Yeah.
One more thing I would like for you to explain and tell me why people are so afraid of it. And you touched on it earlier, critical race theory.
Mhm.
Why are they so up in arms about just critical race theory?
Well, they fear. I think a lot of times people fear what they don't understand, or
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of it's driven by fear. If I'm being real honest, I mean, like if you go back in the '60s, what was
Mm-hmm.
it that people feared? Oh man, my daughter is gonna wanna. They wouldn't put it this politely, so I'm putting it much more politely than they would have said
Race
it.
mixing.
Exactly. So they'd
Race
say, "Oh
mixing.
man, I don't want my daughter marrying a black man," and they would be much ruder than that. And
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of mentality drove a lot of this. And I think today you've still got that kind of, because before people hate, they fear.
That's
And when
true.
they fear, and when they fear,
Act.
they dehumanize. They dehumanize. And
So
so
it's a process.
yeah, yeah. And so when people dehumanize, then you've got permission to kill. I mean, like if the other person is not really human,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is what they do for war. I hate this. They dehumanize the enemy so that the soldiers can go out and kill the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, they don't think they're really shooting humans. They
Mm-hmm.
think, oh, these are monsters, so I need to kill these monsters. And
Yeah.
if you believe somebody else is a monster, then you think you're doing society a favor, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what is happening. There's a really good book on this by Sam Keen, called Faces of the Enemy, and the whole premise of the book is before people kill with their weapons, they kill with their minds. And so I
Wow.
think that's the real mentality we're talking about. And this fear plays a critical role in this.
Mm-hmm. Talk about Mississippi Center. How do you say Mississippi Center for Investigative Reporting?
That's it.
I
That's
think
it.
now, if I'm not mistaken, you broke the story about Sam Dobbins in Holmes County.
I
The
did.
man, someone sent me your link. I didn't know who MCIR was. All I know is it was good information, and from the way I was reading it, I said, whoever this is, they did their homework. And so now it's like I need to see a picture of this guy. I need a picture of him. But you have a nonprofit,
I do.
and talk a little bit about it
Well,
and how you share.
we're trying to continue to do this work. We just did we also did the Emmett Till story that, kind of went wild. It was about Carolyn Bryant's memoir. We got a copy of that and published excerpts from it. We
Whoa, wait a minute. Hold up. Wait a minute. Did you just say you got a copy of the memoir?
Yeah, her unpublished memoir, and we
Yes.
published excerpts from it. Yeah.
Listen, and the thing that this former FBI agent was saying was, hey, there's a memoir out there. It's unpublished, but she's put herself out there. And this could be considered new evidence if we can get, but we know that last week, okay.
Yeah, and the grand jury supposedly met over it, and no builder. That's, of course, I'm real curious. I'm real curious about what they were told or what they were shown. I mean, you hate to say it, but any district attorney district attorney can get a grand jury to do his bidding usually, one way or the other. I mean, what if you want him to indict or if you want him to walk?
So I spoke with an attorney on last week out of Maryland. He said the same thing that you just said.
Yeah.
And he said there's an old adage.
I know what it is.
You can, how did they say?
They said,
you can indict
cheeseburger. A prosecutor can get a grand jury to indict a cheeseburger. That's usually the line people say.
And some say a stop sign. Some say a ham sandwich.
Or ham sandwich. Yeah, that's the other way people say it. The ham sandwich.
Yeah, and so that's my curiosity. And I'm gonna tell you another thing. What got my wheels to spinning? I want to know. I said, what is Carolyn Bryant Dunham's maiden name? And so I began to do research on that. And the one guy who let me pull this guy up. The one guy who caught my attention once I started listening to your book is this guy right here, Sam Bowers. And his middle name is Holloway. Holloway is her maiden name. Okay.
Yeah, I know. And that's something I'll have to research. I never really thought about that. So it's a fascinating point.
That's a far stretch, I know, but I'm willing to go.
I don't know. That side of Bowers' family, I'm not as familiar with. I mean, Bowers is a very odd and interesting character. He's very eccentric, considered himself an intellectual. I don't know that he's nearly as much of an intellectual as he thought, but I mean, he would have been the last person you would have picked to be the head of the Klan, because he had one grandfather who was a congressman in Mississippi who hated the Klan, and then the other, yeah.
Because I have a picture here that I didn't pull up that I want to pull up, and maybe you can explain this. And this is a part of this was a part of your presentation.
Sure.
And it's a tombstone. Let me see here.
Headstone. Yeah.
Headstone.
Is this Cheney's headstone?
It's not Cheney's. Now.
It's okay.
Now it's saying that my disk space is low. But anyways, it had the same name. This guy shared the same name.
Yeah.
As Sam.
As Carolyn Bryant. Yeah.
Yes. And so I was wondering when you said that, if that was
there may be some connection. I just know if so, I don't know it. But like I said, that side of Bowers' family, I'm not quite as familiar with it. As his father's side. So and I was telling you beforehand, and he's from Virginia. He talked about his father being or descendant, an ancestor, being part of the House of Burgess, Virginia House of Burgesses, and first kind of governing body there. And the thing that struck me is that there's a group of men who were involved in killing Nat Turner, who's the one that, the slave revolt.
Yes.
And one of those men, the last name was Bowers, which all this is in Virginia. So it just made me wonder, Did
I
did
don't-
Bowers's ancestor have something to do with that? I don't know. I haven't been able to find a family tree to trace it back. But anyway.
And that's the next thing that I'm searching for, the family tree.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. There may be a family tree. I know that Bowers does have a half brother, which
mhm.
I didn't know until much later. Yeah.
Another thing I was wondering about Carolyn Holloway, Bryant Dunham, was why did she get divorced? You know, why the
Well,
divorce?
I can tell you what her divorce papers said because I've read them.
What?
Yeah, he was. I mean, her husband was abusive. I mean,
Okay,
he was a. I mean, I can tell you beyond that because I've read her memoir. I mean, he was abusive. He,
we can talk about it.
um, not now, according to her, not physically abusive, but verbally abusive.
Yeah, which is even worse if some
Yeah. So
psychologists
he
say.
was so he was verbally abusive, he was a drunk, and he was a womanizer. So I mean all three of those. So she
Okay,
had had enough and they kind of went their separate ways.
now
She divorced him. She divorced him.
okay, and there's a place there where there's an excerpt where she considered herself a victim. Can you go in detail about why she said that? Because you got some people say, this, that, and the third. Because now, in my mind, white society probably ostracized her after all of that. I don't know.
Well, they were ostracized, but not necessarily for the reason people think.
Gotcha.
Um, so that after the sequence on that was these guys got away with it. White society in Mississippi Delta was happy for them to have gotten away with it. They felt like if it would have put a stain on Mississippi, I guess they're thinking, this is the way to get rid of it, which really was the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but but yeah, they got basically involved with that and just it was just raw mentality. So they became but they confessed to Look magazine. These guys
Mm-hmm.
confessed to Look magazine that they were involved in the killing, and that was what really began to turn even white Mississippi society against them. Like they were happy to circle the wagons, let these guys get away with it. But
However,
then once they came out publicly and said, "Hey, um, we really did this," then all of a sudden, they become pariahs, and so they
mm,
had to leave. They had to leave Mississippi. They weren't
mhm.
able to stay in Mississippi. Although interestingly, moved back then later. Anyway,
But I saw where today where Roy moved to Indianola. He tried his hand at law enforcement. He was trying to become a police officer or something. He later got in trouble for food stamps, which
yeah,
Phil Bryant
and
made.
his sister, I think his sister got pardoned. I think I've got that right. His sister,
Mhm.
who was also involved in that, got pardoned. Anyway, it was crazy. Yeah,
Somebody
Bill Clinton, I believe, pardoned her, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
from the food stamp situation,
Mhm.
and they said he went and got in trouble again for the
Yeah,
same.
he got in trouble periodically. I talked to him actually. I talked to him.
Wow,
Yeah,
what
he
guy? What kind of guy was he to
well,
you?
pretty much what you'd expect.
Okay,
He
okay.
when I called him because they had named a street in Chicago after Emmett Till, so I called to ask his opinion about it.
Hmm.
And he gave me some kind of smart aleck, answer
No
about.
remorse. No
Oh
remorse.
no, no.
Like
Well,
like.
actually, he was incredulous. And I remember the quote is like, "I was incredulous. What they're naming a street after Emmett Till."
Uh-huh.
And I asked to try to go. I told him I want to come to interview him, and
Hmm.
he said, He wanted $3,000.
Come on. So
That's
maybe
another.
not buying your story, brother. I can go get that from, he didn't know who you were. But
Anyway.
why is this memoir unpublished still? Because the
What's that?
word on the street is why is the memoir still considered
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. It hasn't been released. The family hasn't officially published it. I mean, it became part of the FBI investigation. Is how it kind of came to light.
Gotcha. So I wonder if the DA, presented that, if it became a part
That's
of.
my you hit on the exact question I had, which is what all did they hear? For
Yes.
example, did they hear that Emmett Till that she claimed Emmett Till identified himself to the killers? That's obviously, at least according to people I've mentioned that to or shared with it,
Hmm.
find most incredulous is this
Hmm.
idea that scared, which she admitted he was scared.
Yes.
The scared 14-year-old from Chicago taken in the dead of night by this white mob of men that he has no idea who they are. And then, there he is. And he's going to identify himself. Really? Really? I mean, I just find that just really incredulous I mean, I can't believe
But
anybody would do it.
they say he never begged for his life. Based on
See,
what Roy,
that's all part of that William Bradford Huey story, which is, in my opinion, a lot of it lies. This whole idea
okay.
that Emmett Till never cowered, he was never, you know, oh bull. I mean, I'm just being honest. I mean,
Here's a
you're
14-year-old
14,
kid.
you're 14, you're in this strange place and they're beating you mercilessly and you're not going to cry out and you're going to be defiant to the end. That was
You
concocted. That was concocted by William Bradford Huey, in my opinion.
Now, who was William Bradford Huey?
He was a journalist who did the Look magazine piece. And
Wow.
I have to tell you, I believe that was gospel for many years. And then began to kind of gradually find out, wait a minute, that's not true. Wait a
Hmm.
minute. It appears that Emmett Till's body was thrown, into the river in Glendora, not
Right.
downstream
Uh-huh.
and just different things that
Uh-huh.
wait a minute, he wasn't killed on the banks of the Tallahatchie. He was killed in the barn
And
and
taken
beaten there. Yeah.
and taken. And see, I always thought he died in Tallahatchie County.
That's what the killers wanted you to think. And that's what they told William Brad. That's what William Bradford Huey published. He purposely published, there's a real good kind of opinion piece that we have written by a lawyer. His name is Jill Collin Jefferson,
Hmm.
and she's a Harvard grad, but she did an excellent piece about kind of analyzing it legally.
Hmm.
And basically, Huey himself could have possibly been prosecuted because he deliberately concealed these murders, like he knew these other people were involved, and purposely kind of wrote them out of the story.
Now,
And
where
that's
was
why
he?
the killing, that's why they moved they created a second beating in Glendora. Well, he was already dead by that point.
So, and I think it's safe to say it was overkill what they did to him.
Oh, no question.
Oh my God. And so I wonder now if there was a reason why they put it back in LaFleur County. You know what I mean? Like, did it happen in LaFleur County? Because
So, so just explain it legally a little bit. If you have a conspiracy, or let's say abduction, we'll just make it simple because it was an abduction. So let's say
mm-hmm,
you have an abduction, and it began in LaFleur County,
mm-hmm.
and then it ended in Tallahatchie. Ended in Tallahatchie. Well, the body's found in Tallahatchie.
Mm-hmm.
So you could prosecute any of those places.
Gotcha.
You're not legally restricted.
Gotcha.
Or if someone abducts someone and takes them across 3 states and then kills them over there,
Mm-hmm.
technically you can prosecute them in any of those states.
Gotcha. And with Carolyn Holloway, Brian Dunham, where people are really upset is because she's the center. They are saying that she's the reason why these guys went in the night and got Emmett. Okay. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there is a thing called a meeting of the minds
right.
when a crime is in progress, right? There's no way you can back out once the thing starts, right? Because now
Yeah, yeah.
you're part of it. And
And
uh,
I mean, obviously, the FBI agent is convinced that she identified Till. Or it's
yes,
like, if she had not identified Till,
gotten the wrong child. They would have gotten Moses.
they would have just released him. They would have just said, "No, well, there you go." The fact that he's dead would suggest that
She
she did in some way identify him, and she
right.
herself, according to her
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't tell her husband about what happened inside the store for fear of what her husband would do. So,
How did he find out?
found out from someone in the store. And
Mm.
the other part of this is there was also these 2 black men. One that was in the store, and Roy thought had something to do with what happened in the store.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that they picked up, as they're driving, and Carolyn Bryant's with them and says that's not the one. So they throw the guy out of the truck, and he
Mm-hmm.
basically loses his front teeth. And so that obviously would suggest, a pattern of behavior. You know what I mean? Like there's some indication
That
that
he was abusive
well,
and
that she was with them and
yes,
identified. And then that same thing with Mose Wright. Mose Wright's testimony is he heard a light voice, lighter than a man's. I basically say there he is, or that's him, or something like that. When the killers brought Emmett Till out, so
so
that would tend to suggest that she was the one who identified Emmett
out of
Till.
all of your years as an investigative reporter,
Sure.
have you ever seen anything like this where a DA is not communicating with the family beforehand? Where it happened before?
Well, I think in terms of like this is such an incredibly high profile case, so certainly, usually the district attorney is having consistent conversations with families. Absolutely.
And so the thing is, why now? And I want to know, who is this woman to the point that she cannot be brought or will not be brought or indicted? Most people, and I'm just going to be honest, most people will say, okay, we're going to serve the arrest warrant. Okay. We're going to, just to make it go away, we're going to serve the warrant. We're going to bring in a jury. We're going to present this, that, and the third, but we're going to let her go. They would at least go through the motions of satisfying the indictment, not a conviction, but an indictment to get the monkey off their backs. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
not
I mean,
you're not even getting that much.
well, I think the district attorney wants the federal authorities, FBI, close the case. This is my opinion. Once they close the case,
Mm-hmm.
then I think he, at that point, kind of washed his hands of it and said, "I'm not doing anything." So that's my impression. I mean, he has not indicated anything since then, other
He's not a
than
Bobby.
the case is going to stay closed. Yeah.
He is not a Bobby DeLauder. He's not. And
Well,
and
these
I
cases, and I'm not defending him in saying this. These cases do take a lot of work, or
mhm.
that you have to be dedicated and you have to really want to do them. And if you don't want to do them,
This is
then
what.
that's kind of what's going to happen. Yeah.
But I had the attorney ask me, how long has he been the district attorney? So he is not just knowing that about this case, and so even the people before him
Right.
didn't do anything. And and it seems pretty unfair to put this at his feet, but it happened before him, but now he's the one who is there.
Right.
And it's so many pieces missing to the puzzle. So many people in the Black community hurting and upset with Dwayne Richardson, the district attorney, because he won't even hold a press conference. He won't even.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going on with all of that.
Yes.
It seems to me he should publicly address it, and I don't know. I mean, he's the district attorney, not me, but it seemed to me if you're making a decision like this, you need to explain why, and I think
He's
that
statement.
that
There's a
helps.
statement. Nothing coming from your mouth, no words coming from you, just people reading what you said. Like you're being safe. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to be safe about it, is how some people feel. But I'd never seen anything like it. Trump house was just raided and people are having press conferences and you're seeing people talking. This is normal behavior. And
Right.
what we're seeing in Sunflower, Washington, and LaFleur County is abnormal behavior coming from a DA.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's
He's been in it
interesting.
longer than I have. I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, I'm just saying we'll see what happens. Perhaps there'll be a change. Next year's the election, and you might see a change that way, and that can have an effect on that decision. Yeah.
But the thing is now, race against time. Race
Mhm.
against time. And I
Oh,
don't.
there's no question in this case. If you're going to do it, you're already pretty late in the game.
Mhm. And they've found her in Kentucky, is what they're saying. And from what I understand, they are protesting outside of wherever they believe she is,
Okay.
every day, every
Probably
day.
are.
Um,
Probably so.
but why not serve the warrant? They served the warrant for
Well,
Byron.
yeah, well, if you serve the warrant, I think the next question is what next? I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't do that, but I'm saying what are you going to do next? If and I'm not sure about the warrant if it's for murder or for kidnapping. If it's for kidnapping, then the statute is run out. It's only a 2-year statute of limitations. So
So
you
I'm not sure about the warrant myself. So I don't know that
You
it's
got
for.
it. In my mind, a better way of doing it is you have a grand jury meet and consider the case, and obviously that's what happened the other day. But we
But
don't know. But what we
they're
don't
saying it
know
was
is
a big
what he
secret.
presented. Yeah.
They're saying all the district attorney did this and it was a big secret. You know, even
Yes.
when I spoke with Jaribu Hill, she used the terminology the family was in the dark
Exactly.
about a lot of things. So it's almost
Yeah.
like a flex. Like I can do what I want, very well want to do,
Right.
to you, and you just get over it. It's like a
Mhm.
slap in the face of people like Medger Evers, and those who came before him. And when
Right.
you find a white boy like Bobby, and I don't mean to call him a white boy, but I have to say this:
He is
when
a
you
white boy.
and he is, I can't make him be nothing else.
Me
Okay.
too. I'm a white boy too.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you find people like yourself and Bobby DeLauder who sacrifice, we got a Black guy in office who won't even lift a finger to make proper contact, according to the attorneys now, with the
Right.
family. And,
Well,
and so
I think what the FBI agent that I interviewed suggested was just for a grand jury to consider this. But if all you're going to do with a grand jury is just get them to do what you want them to do, you're not really considering the evidence in the case. But maybe they did that. I don't know. we're just kind of in the dark about how
And
much evidence they
so
present.
now, is this true? Because according to Jaribu, the thing we won't know about the transcripts until 6 months out.
That's what we want, right? What we want to know is for 6 months because we can't talk to grand jurors until 6 months. So until
But
6 months, it's a crime
but
mess with them. Yeah.
is the transcript readily available right now, though?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's gonna be 6 months. Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough.
It is.
Again,
It
right
is.
this time.
The Till case has been consistently frustrating ever since I mean, I started writing about it in 1991, and even then, when one of the main killers was still alive, there wasn't any way to go at it. The kidnapping has back then only had a 2-year statute of limitation, which is absolutely ridiculous.
I didn't
So.
know that.
Yeah,
Only
in other words, like there's no way to prosecute. Like, let's say Carolyn Bryant right now. What if you wanted to prosecute her for kidnapping? You can't because the statute's only a 2-year statute of limitation.
so why are we calling it an active warrant? Explain that.
Well, that's what everyone says it is, and I don't know. I mean, it's
Okay.
it's beyond my
Scope. Okay.
Look, you presume it could be active and presented and served. But then the next question is, then what?
Well, listen,
If you don't,
Jerry.
what I'm
Listen,
saying
Jerry.
is, if you don't have a change in heart for the prosecution, then arresting isn't going to do anything other than just, she sits in jail for a little bit and goes right back home,
Jerry.
So
At least serve the warrant. At least arrest her. They won't even do that. And according to the family, they feel that they are protecting her because she's a white woman from that era, of white
yeah.
supremacy when everything was just, oh, you don't touch the lily white girls
I
because
would
they're.
think the district attorney would not want to. Well, I would hope that, I would think the district attorney would not be, because it's a white woman, that wouldn't necessarily keep him from doing it. But having said that, the FBI, when they came back and closed the case, that's my impression. That when the FBI closed the case, he just kind of went, "Yeah, I'm done."
So what about new evidence?
Well, that's what I'm saying. No, I don't know how much, if any of this got taken into account. The district
Or what
attorney
was the
did
press?
not. The district attorney did not mention the memoir. He only mentioned the arrest warrant. That's all he mentioned. He did not
And,
mention
and
the memoir at all.
and also in the press release, if I'm not mistaken, I think he said he went back to 2004
Mm-hmm.
or something with that information that they gave to the jury and all of this kind of stuff. But I wonder why he never mentioned the unpublished memoir if the FBI had already gotten that information.
Yeah, the FBI had that. The FBI's had that since they
So why would
began investigating that. But
I?
apparently, at least from what I gather, no one had really looked at it until we wrote about it. No one had really looked at the memoir from the perspective of is this a piece of evidence that can
Yes.
help this case? And the answer is yes, because it's very obvious in this memoir that she's not just lying, she's doubling down. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I'm gonna have to go, but this has
Yes.
been great talking to
It's
you. And
been awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Jerry Mitchell. You are the bomb.com. Thank you so much for shedding light on
yeah,
some of
if
that.
people want to read more about the Mississippi Center for Investigative Reporting, our website is
Yeah.
Mississippi CIR.org, and that's where all our stories. In fact, we just published a story about how Mississippi now is #1 again in incarceration rate.
Yeah.
#1 in not just in the United States, #1 in the world.
You
And
broke that story.
yeah, I read that story.
There's no way. I'm talking to the guy who, and that was on the news last week.
Yeah, I know. I wrote it. It was the fact that, it's just not. Mississippi's going the wrong way right now. We were declining in prison population for a while, and now we're going back the wrong
The
direction.
math is not mathing, as they say. The math is not mathing.
Yeah, we're going the wrong way. Almost every state is now declining in prison population, but we're going back the other direction.
Hey, thank you for your contribution to investigative journalism, man. I would love to work with you myself.
Well, any volunteer work we'll take. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Listen, they can find your book on Amazon. Do you sign your books in mail?
Yeah, in fact, in Jackson, since we are in Mississippi, if you go to Lemuria, they have signed copies at Lemuria Books. Lemuria Books in Jackson.
Lemuria Books.
Lemuria, Lemuria Books. Or you can go online and order them. If you're not in Jackson, Square Books, if you happen to live in the Oxford area, Square Books has signed books.
Oh, wow. I am so proud of you, man, for your contributions. I'm like, oh my God.
I've been very blessed. It's
celebrity.
I've been very blessed. It's I am a person of faith, and I do believe God's hand's been involved in these cases. So I certainly give him the glory.
Don't let this be your last visit to the Mike magazine. And
I will not. Thank you for having me.
And you're on the cover of the Mike magazine this month.
I appreciate that. Thanks. Thanks very much.
You have a great night.
All right. Thank you. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
And you were just listening to Mr. Jerry Mitchell, Angela Buckner here, Delta Sip, where we sip slow, talk what we know, and now I gotta go.